With the camera.
Yep. Stay tuned, stay tuned, stay tuned. I'm here with the coach, John Brent.
And I'm here with the vet, Ian Griffin.
So, hey, coach, today we're going to talk about something different.
No politics?
No politics.
Oh, wow.
No politics.
No sports?
No sports.
Okay.
It's a dry day today.
I know.
With all that water in the background.
Yeah.
We're at the Jump Talk outside location.
Yes, we are. I was trying to play with the water. Sorry. I'm like a kid.
So, today we're going to talk about our top favorite books.
Absolutely.
We're going to go to 5 of them. Top
Yes.
favorite books that just kind of struck something interesting with each other here.
Well, a lot of people don't know. I mean, I'm sure they know that about you more than me, but I love to read. I've read for years. Before I didn't go to college, I was 39 years old, and I probably read hundreds of books before I went to school. And then when I got to school, I just changed the topic, but I still read a couple books a week. But when I think about books, a lot of these books are probably, most of these are going to be in the last 10 years, but a book that kind of got my vision a little bit different was a book called Justice by Michael Sandel. And he talks about the different ways that we look at morality, things that we look at affirmative action, depending on which side of the spectrum that you're on. And it's just a great book. Now I use some of that book in my teaching. He's actually a Harvard professor, and you can look at his lectures that he does in this huge Harvard lecture hall that he does on some of these things, and I use it as a morality thinking for my prisoners now. And we just did one a couple weeks ago, and I'll make it real quick, where he's talking about if a trolley gets away from you and they're going to run, it's going to hit 5 people at the end of the trolley, but you can turn it to just kill one. What would you do? So some of these things are that make you think about morality. But Michael Sandel, Justice, number 5.
Okay. So my number 5 is Black Hearts, One Platoon's Descent in Iraq.
Wow.
By Jim Frederick. And it's, you know, as soldiers, we like to paint ourselves to be pretty decent people, but this was a time that we wasn't.
Yeah.
And it's a reference to 2nd Brigade strike down in Iraq, and it was a unit that there was a lot of leadership failures in there that doesn't fix that there was some bad people there, but it probably could have intervened enough to stifle it. And as you read the book, you sit there and you're going, where the heck is the leadership at the ground level? And my wife read it. She's a soldier, of course, and
Right.
we both served in the 101st as well, just not at a strike. And there's a lot of great people that came out of strike, so it's not to paint them bad, but both of us said the same thing around page 50. Where the heck is the leadership? So I think sometimes we have to humble ourselves and see our own dirt sometimes, not just all our great
Exactly.
things. So that's my number 5.
Well, we're going to speed it up today. Number 4 for me is actually Miracle in Philadelphia by Catherine Bowen. And if you want to know about what really happened in Philadelphia with the Declaration of Independence, and 11 years later when they come back to have to try to fix the Articles of Confederation, which was terrible, and ended up not fixing it, they actually started a whole new government called the Constitution of the United States. It actually explains that miracle, and it shows how unbelievable it really was, that what occurred there. And because of what occurred there, you know, over 230 years ago, it's what we have today. So
Yep.
Miracle in Philadelphia is a great book. You got to read it if you care about the country.
I'm going to have to dig that one out. So, Coach, I got one called Tough as They Come by Staff Sergeant Travis Mills. Staff Sergeant Travis Mills is only one of 4 at the time quadruple amputee from downrange.
Unbelievable. Hero.
And you ever hear him speak, this guy's got more character than any comedian ever has. And he has so much that he could probably look at himself in the mirror and say life isn't good, but he doesn't look at it that way.
Right.
His book is the story of his life, and it's just a phenomenal story about him and how he's made it through. So that's my number 4.
Number 3 for me is a book that I just read a few years ago, and it is absolutely 100% the 21st century young person. It's called The Coddling of the American Mind by Jonathan Haidt. He's a psychiatrist from New York, and it's absolutely just blows out of the park and shows us where this change started about 7 or 8 years prior to the book being written, where kids being pretty much manipulated by time away from outside and time away from being failure. And, you know, participation ribbon time starts coming in, and also electronic time, but it's called The Coddling of the American Mind. I actually had used a whole chapter of it for my class just this last year. Talked about it online. If you haven't read that book, you want to know what's going on college campuses and why there's such this big weird change of freedom of speech being just annihilated, The Calling of the American Mind.
I like that. So my number 3 is from a president. It's A Charge to Keep from George W. Bush.
G-Dub.
And it just tells about his calling and going in to become a president and his path there. And I just think it's a phenomenal book. If you want to see the inside of him a little bit, it's there for you. So
Great. Now my 2 and 1, it was I had to kind of, I've been switching back in my mind, but I'm gonna go with number 2, a book that changed my life. I used to go to a church, wasn't really committed Christian. I would even call myself probably not even saved, even though I grew up in church. And there was this guy that was there, and I'm not gonna use his name, but he used to be so into it. He was so passionate about God and so passionate about Jesus. And one day I just stopped him because I was playing in the youth Christian band, just helping them out. And I said, dude, how are you so passionate about Christ? And he said, I read a book, and you know what? I'm going to give it to you. You need to read it. And it's called Crazy Love by Francis Chan. And I read that book, and it absolutely changed my mind so much. I immediately wanted to enter seminary, and I got totally involved in getting a degree in religion based on that book, Crazy Love, Francis Chan, because it's like, are you obsessed with so many things in your life, but you're not obsessed with your Creator, and you need to be. Great book.
So, Coach, my number 2 is called The Badlands. Excuse me, not the Badlands. The Bloodlands. It's the part of Europe between that fought between Hitler and Stalin. So it's really Germany through Ukraine to part of Russia. And it's that territory that kept changing hands over and over. It's by Timothy D. Snyder. And what's great about this book is in there it talks about Stalin. And when you read it, you have to really ask yourself which one was worse, Stalin or Hitler, because they really were very comparable, to be quite honest, in a lot of ways. But Stalin could not have he acknowledged the Jewish plight, but he had to have history rewritten in Russia, in the USSR, because he could not allow for any other ethnic group or ethnicity or culture to have a harder time than the Russians.
Yeah.
Because that was in their demeanor. So it definitely talks about them rewriting history on purpose, kind of what we like to do today here in America at times. You know.
Wow, it reminds me of a book. I need to read that. I read one called The Crisis Years about Khrushchev and Kennedy, and that reminds me of that book. Wow. All right, number 1.
Number one
for me, and I actually the last 2 schools that I've been at, one is at a prison, one is at a CPS Foster a charter school. I made sure that they allowed me to purchase this book so my students could check it out, not only to help them, but also we could go over it. It's by M. Scott Peck. It's called The Road Less Traveled. The very first sentence just sets the tone. It says life is difficult. And it literally just shows you how, he's a psychiatrist, how life is a whole bunch of bad things that happen, how you deal with those things, things with a mindset. And when you understand that life is difficult from the get-go, then you'll look at things a little bit different than you think you just grow up and life's just supposed to be this perfect scenario. But A Road Less Traveled, I think it's a for sure read for every child, teenager, definitely for young adult, and even for adults, because we just go through life. Why life is supposed to be difficult? It's not an easy thing.
Well, Coach, I agree on that. I think who defines us who we are is our how we face challenges.
Sure.
My number 1 is a book called The German Boy, and it's by Wolfgang W.E. Samuel. And my wife got me on this book because this was written about Wolfgang Samuel when he was a kid in World War II.
Wow.
And it was the same region my wife grew up on. And that young man right there had to watch his mother provide for the family through different occupations at the time. And the only commodity was her and the strife they went through. And what's also unique is I happened to be at the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum with my wife and my son, and we ran into him there. And so it really strikes a chord because it has a lot of, in our family with her father, it reminds her of her father. And then I actually got to meet the guy, and he's just a great gentleman. And the guy, Wolfgang, actually became a spy pilot for the United States.
Wow.
Later. So it's a phenomenal story.
Well, one of the things I can initially, just by looking at, I didn't know your list, you didn't know mine. We don't have a fiction book one.
No, we don't.
And to be honest with you, I've only read one fiction book ever that I completed. I've been given, you got to read this, you got to read that. And the fiction book was actually by Stephen King about the JFK assassination. My sister Sarah gave it to me, so I said, okay, I will read it. It was about this long, and I ended up reading it. And as soon as it was over, I was like, okay, put me back in nonfiction. Please put me back in nonfiction.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, but I will say this: I think people need to read more instead of watch TV and be on the internet. If you can read more, it takes your mind away from things. And the things that I read, I think I comprehend it better. And there's things like I'm always remembering, oh yeah, and that was in that book, and it kind of helps you remember how to deal with things.
Well, Coach, I'll say for me, it took a long time for me to read for pleasure, because in the military, you gotta digest information for a long time to absorb it in, and you gotta act on it real quick. And then as I was going through college, I was reading things to get through the class, and so it took a long time for me to actually read things for pleasure. So most of the things I had to read was either congressional papers or history.
Right.
And so I fell in line with that, and those are the ones I gravitated to. It was hard for me to read fiction books. I've only read about 5 of them. Da Vinci Code was one.
Yeah.
Agatha
Great movie.
Christie, great movie. Great book.
Yeah.
Agatha Christie book I read, and I read Firestarter by Stephen
Firestarter,
King.
yeah.
And that's really about it. The rest of them, I always said they kind of have to be factual, otherwise I'm not absorbed in them.
That's me. If I know something and I can say, wait a minute, this didn't happen this way, because I already know the reality of it, I'm like, I don't even want to read this book. So maybe I need to open up my mind a little bit. But I'm 50 years old next month. I don't think so.
So, hey, Coach, I think we need to hear what everybody else's top 5
Top
are.
5 books.
Because we might want to read them. I mean, I would like to read them, maybe.
Top 5 nonfiction books.
Yes. Yeah. So I think that'll be good. And what do you think, Coach?
I think it's time. It's time to end this one.
It is. So from the coach
To the vet.
it's time to say stay tuned, stay tuned, stay tuned.